Hello and welcome. Katie and I would like to welcome you to the Owen Uric baby shower. So, we are going to have a series of videos of us opening gifts. As you can see, Katie is ripe and ready to go.
Not quite yet.
We've still got 10 more weeks. We've still got 10 more weeks for little baby girl. September 28th is the due date. We appreciate you guys checking out this YouTube channel. We're trying to make as best as we can something that feels like a real baby shower over Zoom. We are delighted that you're taking taking part in this, and to kick things off, just like I would do if we actually had a baby shower here at the house, I'm going to fix a cocktail for y'all. So, this would be like we're kind of in the party, people are chatting with each other, getting some, cocktail. I was thinking about maybe even doing, a little old-fashioned bar if we were to have it here, but of course, COVID happened, so that's not a thing. But I'll be able to make my favorite cocktail, the old-fashioned, for you all today. And then perhaps you can join me with an old-fashioned when we actually have the baby shower itself coming up on August 2nd. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started with making the cocktail. Katie's going to have a mocktail, and that'll be coming shortly on the YouTube channel as well.
All right.
There you go. So, to make an old-fashioned, you really need 4 main ingredients, not including ice. And just like cooking, a good old-fashioned is built on a foundation of good ingredients, especially, in my opinion, the bourbon and the bitters. You can't have a good old-fashioned if you don't have good bourbon and good bitters. So, for the bourbon, I'll be mixing this with an Elijah Craig barrel-proof bourbon. It's a little bit stronger than most bourbon, which makes this cocktail nice and bourbon-forward, pretty boozy cocktail. If you want to spice things up a little bit, you can use a bit of rye. So this is Woodford Reserve rye, which I also enjoy making an old-fashioned with rye every once in a while. For those bitters, like I mentioned, you can use your Angostura. You can get Angostura anywhere that has any other sort of alcohol, unless you're North Carolina, which has ABC stores, which is ridiculous. Everybody in the Midwest, you don't know how good you have it. Peychaud's also really available. Peychaud's Angostura are pretty different. Angostura is probably more common in an old-fashioned than Peychaud's is. But what I'll be making this with today is Woodford Reserve bitters. So, a friend of mine, Amber Benner, turned me on to these. Her husband did an old-fashioned bar at their baby shower, which was a great idea. So I'm stealing a little bit of that. These Woodford Reserve bitters are excellent. So I've got a couple of sample bottles here. That was the aromatic. They make an orange bitters. And then what I'll be using today is their spiced cherry bitters, which are really nice and an old-fashioned because of the cherry kind of orange component to it. So, talking about the cherry, maraschino cherries is a nice thing to add to an old-fashioned. Very common, very typical. This is just a store brand maraschino cherry. Orange, I make a pretty citrus-forward old-fashioned. So this is a quarter of an orange, and we're going to be putting this whole thing into the old-fashioned. And then finally, this might make 5 ingredients if you're counting. I've got simple syrup. So the simple syrup is a key for making this a little bit sweet. If you don't have simple syrup, some sugar does just about as good. But you have to make sure you muddle it long enough for that sugar to dissolve. So, to start with, once we have our ingredients arranged in front of us, slice up your orange. I like to make fairly thin slices with my orange. Again, this is a pretty citrus-forward old-fashioned. You might be thinking to yourself at home, wow, Ben, that is a lot of orange, and I agree with you. It's fair, it's a fair criticism. I like that. Thank you for playing along. Okay, so you've got your orange slices. Again, we're using most of the quarter of the orange, about like this. Going to toss it into my cocktail. If you have sugar and not simple syrup, you take your sugar, take about a heaping teaspoonful or a teaspoon and a half of sugar, toss that over the top. But I made some simple syrup, which is really, really easy. Just 1-to-1 sugar and water. So I just usually use a cup of sugar, cup of water, dissolve that together, and then just keep it in this nice little metal container in the fridge. So we're going to add a 1/2 ounce of the simple syrup. So to measure a 1/2 ounce, that's also a teaspoonful, right? If you have a measuring shot glass like this, it's really nice. It's got a 1/2 ounce marked on there. But what I'll be using is Mona Cornwell's horn-handled jigger. I love using this, and I love saying horn-handled jigger. This is just a little bit over a 1/2 ounce, and so I'll pour just a little bit shy of a 1/2 ounce into one of the sides of the horn-handled jigger. Okay, so got that in there. And use a muddler. If you don't have a real muddler, backside of a wooden spoon, pestle from a mortar and pestle also works well. So muddle that together, really get down in there with the cocktail. What you're doing here is you're releasing a lot of the juice from the orange. Really, with the exception of that 1/2 ounce of simple syrup and some of the ice melts, you're really talking about, all the rest of the liquid is going to be booze. And so the orange juice is nice to get a little bit of that out. And then by muddling the rind, you get a little bit of that nice kind of, orange bitter flavor as well, which offsets the sweetness of the cocktail quite nicely. Moving on next, we've got our maraschino cherries. Again, this is Food Lion's finest. For any of you that just said, what is Food Lion? Bless you. Food Lion is the discount grocery store here in North Carolina. So I like to add a couple of maraschino cherries to it. And then just for good measure, because you get to the end of the maraschino cherry jar and you've got like all this cherry liquid, which is good and it's sweet, but like what are you going to do with it? So I just take a spoonful of maraschino cherry juice and for good measure, add that right on top. Okay, so next we take our bourbon. Again, this is the Elijah Craig barrel proof bourbon. I'm going to add 1.5 ounces of this. So that would be 3 tablespoons. That would be if you have a measure like this. Easy, just, shot glass full of bourbon. If you need a measuring cup, 1.5 ounces, fairly straightforward there. But once more, I'll be using this horn handle jigger to measure my bourbon. So basically 2 measures of the bourbon with that. 1, 2. Okay. So the last ingredient for the ice is the bitters. Recipe probably tell you 3-4 dashes of bitters. I like an old fashioned that's a little bit more bitter forward than that. So I usually add roughly 5 to 7 dashes of bitters. And if you have good quality bitters, it's not going to overpower the cocktail. It'll just add a nice sort of bitterness to balance out some of the sweetness from the orange juice and the simple syrup and some of that maraschino cherry juice as well. So like that. Okay. And finally, take your ice. Fill it up with ice. Grab the same spoon that you used to fish out those cherries. Give everything a little stir. There you are. Cheers!